The last person she saw alive was you, her brother, strangling the life out of her, having beaten her up and tried to rape her. What you did was truly evil. Tried to dispose of your blood-stained clothing. I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment. The law requires me to impose a punishment part, which is a period of time you will serve before being eligible to apply for parole. I stress, apply for parole, as you will only ever be released if you're deemed to pose no risk to the public.
A teenage girl takes one last selfie with her big brother, both smiling, captioned, "My big bro." Within 2 hours, she's dead, and he's standing over her lifeless body. This isn't some twisted fiction. This happened in Hamilton, Scotland, where 16-year-old Amber Gibson made the fatal mistake of trusting family. Tonight, we dive into a case so disturbing it will shatter everything you believe about sibling bonds. Because sometimes, the person sleeping in the next room is the monster you should fear most. This is the story of how brotherly love became a death sentence, and why this case will haunt you long after the credits roll. You're about to witness a betrayal so profound it defies human understanding. What started as an innocent reunion between siblings ended in sexual assault, murder, and a cover-up so calculated it fooled police for days. But the horror doesn't end there, because after Amber Gibson died, her nightmare was just beginning. Stay with me because this story has twists that will leave you questioning everyone in your own life. Picture New Year's Day 2005 at Wishaw General Hospital in Lanarkshire, Scotland. While families across the country celebrated fresh beginnings, Amber Gibson entered a world already fractured by violence and pain. She wasn't just born into poverty or neglect. She was born into active danger, with a biological father whose crimes were so heinous they wouldn't fully surface for nearly 2 decades. Her brother Connor Gibson, 2 years older, became both her closest companion and ultimately her executioner. Together, these children would survive a childhood that reads like a horror story, marked by domestic violence, sexual abuse, and trauma that would reshape their young minds in catastrophically different ways. By the time Amber was just 3 years old and Connor 5, both children were removed from their parents' custody in what social services hoped was a rescue mission. Their biological father, Peter Gibson, had turned their home into a house of horrors. He regularly assaulted their mother, Annery Adams, in violent rages that left psychological scars on everyone within reach. But the physical abuse was just the surface of Peter Gibson's depravity. Between 2001 and 2008, the exact years when Amber and Connor were supposed to be under his protection, Peter Gibson was systematically sexually assaulting young boys and brutally attacking women. His conviction wouldn't come until April 2023, years after his daughter's murder, but it painted a disturbing picture of the toxic environment that shaped Connor's earliest understanding of power, violence, and sexuality. The children found salvation, or so it seemed, with Craig and Carol Nan, foster parents who opened their home in the quiet town of Law. When 5-year-old Connor arrived with 3-year-old Amber in tow, he reportedly whispered words that would later prove tragically ironic. "We are safe now." For the first time in their short lives, the siblings experienced stability, warmth, and what felt like genuine love. The Nans weren't just providing shelter, they were offering a second chance at childhood, an opportunity to heal from trauma most adults couldn't survive. For years this arrangement seemed to work. Connor and Amber grew up together under the Nans' caring guidance, developing the kind of sibling bond that should have lasted a lifetime. But beneath the surface of this seemingly successful placement, something dark was taking root. The trauma they'd experienced hadn't simply disappeared, it was growing, festering, and transforming in ways no one could have predicted. As Amber entered her teenage years, the carefully constructed piece began to crumble. By age 14, the placement that had once saved her life became impossible to maintain. The situation had deteriorated to the point where even the devoted Nans had to make a heartbreaking admission. Connor and Amber were not a good mix, and it was no longer safe for them to live under the same roof. The foster parents who had given everything to save these children were forced to make an impossible choice. Amber was moved out of the family home and placed in Hill House Children's Unit in Hamilton, a residential care facility that would become her final home. Connor remained with the Nans until he turned 18, when he transitioned to the Blue Triangle Homeless Hostel, a move that placed him just miles away from his sister. Despite the upheaval and the clear warning signs that had forced her removal from the Nan household, Amber continued to shine. She remained a beacon of creativity and warmth, pouring her heart into art and music with dreams that would never see full bloom. Those who knew her during this period speak of her supportive nature, her infectious laugh, and her remarkable capacity for love despite everything she'd endured. She was resilient in a way that impressed adults and inspired her peers. But the separation from Connor hadn't healed the toxic dynamic between them. If anything, it had intensified it into something far more dangerous. Whatever had made them incompatible as housemates was still there, growing stronger in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to explode. That moment came on Friday, November 26, 2021. What should have been just another typical evening in Hamilton transformed into the opening act of a nightmare that would shock Scotland and expose the darkest possibilities of family betrayal. Connor Gibson, now 18 and living in temporary accommodation, made a phone call that immediately concerned staff at Hill House Children's Unit. He wanted to see Amber, and something about his tone, his urgency, set off alarm bells for the care workers who had come to know the siblings' complicated history. Care home manager Ian Curry would later recall the warning he gave Amber, "Don't go." The staff had legitimate fears about Connor's behavior, red flags that had been accumulating over months of concerning interactions. But Amber was excited. Despite everything that had happened, despite the placement breakdown that had separated them, this was still her big brother calling. She had maintained hope that their relationship could be repaired, that the bond they'd forged as traumatized children could overcome whatever darkness had grown between them. She left the safety of the care home and walked into Hamilton's town center with anticipation, not fear. CCTV cameras captured their reunion in painful detail. Two siblings walking together through the streets, chatting, seemingly at ease with each other. To any observer, they looked like a normal brother and sister catching up, maybe planning their weekend or sharing inside jokes. Amber was animated, happy to be spending time with Connor after their forced separation. At some point during their walk, Amber pulled out her phone and took a selfie. Both siblings smiled for the camera, and she captioned the image, "My big bro," before sharing it on Snapchat. It was 10 p.m. when they disappeared into Cadzo Glen, a wooded area in the heart of Hamilton that offered privacy and seclusion. That innocent photo, taken in a moment of sibling affection, became her final message to the world. What happened in those woods over the next 90 minutes defies human comprehension and challenges everything we think we know about family bonds. For over an hour and a half, Amber Gibson endured unthinkable brutality at the hands of the person she trusted most in the world. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of lost control. The timeline suggests a prolonged, deliberate assault that escalated from violence to sexual assault to murder. CCTV cameras captured Connor emerging from the park alone at 11:30 p.m., his demeanor completely transformed from the cheerful brother who had entered with Amber. He was exhausted, his movements sluggish and deliberate. The footage shows him slumping against a metal barrier, physically drained by his own evil actions, before beginning the methodical process of disposing of blood-stained clothing that could tie him to the crime. Back at the Blue Triangle hostel just before midnight, Connor made what appeared to be a panicked but calculated call to Hill House Children's Unit. His story was carefully crafted. Amber had stormed off after a sibling argument, the kind of dispute that happens between brothers and sisters all the time. He claimed to be worried about her safety and wanted to make sure she'd gotten home safely. To the staff on the other end of the line, it sounded like genuine concern from a caring older brother. It was all an elaborate lie, a desperate attempt to establish an alibi and cover up the most heinous form of fratricide imaginable. As police launched their missing person investigation the following day, Connor's carefully constructed web of lies began to show cracks almost immediately. When questioned about what he'd been wearing during his meeting with Amber, he claimed he'd worn a Rangers football shirt and camouflage shorts, clothing that would have made him easily identifiable and memorable to witnesses. But CCTV footage told a completely different story. The cameras clearly showed Connor wearing a white t-shirt and gray shorts during his final walk with Amber. Those same clothes were later discovered dumped in a wheelie bin outside his hostel, stained with his sister's blood and bearing traces of the violent struggle that had taken place in Cadzo Glen. The physical evidence began mounting against Connor with each passing hour. Forensic analysis revealed blood spatters, DNA transfers, and digital footprints that painted an undeniable picture of his guilt. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the entire investigation wasn't the evidence itself. It was Connor's continued ability to deceive everyone around him, including the police officers who were desperately searching for his missing sister. 4 days after murdering Amber in cold blood, Connor posted a public tribute to her on social media that was so convincing it fooled friends, family, and even some investigators. His message read, "Amber, you will fly high for the rest of time. We all miss you, especially me. I love you, Ginger. Goodbye for now." The post received dozens of sympathetic responses from people who had no idea they were comforting a killer. Even hours before his arrest, as police were closing in with DNA evidence and CCTV footage that destroyed his alibi, Connor made one final social media post asking the town of Hamilton to leave a light on for Amber. It was a performance so convincing that some observers later wondered if Connor had developed multiple personalities or genuinely believed his own lies. On November 28, 3 days after Amber disappeared, her naked body was finally discovered in Cadzo Glen. She was found cold, exposed, and abandoned like discarded trash in the very woods where she'd gone to reconnect with her brother. The crime scene told a story of savage brutality that shocked even experienced investigators. Amber had suffered significant blunt force trauma to her head and body from repeated strikes that had broken her nose and left her face nearly unrecognizable. Her underwear had been violently torn during a sexual assault that preceded her murder. The medical examiner's report revealed that in her final moments, Connor Gibson had wrapped his hands around his sister's throat and strangled the life from her body. The last face Amber Gibson ever saw wasn't that of a stranger or random attacker. It was her own brother, the person who should have protected her above all others, looking down at her as he extinguished her life. But the horror of Amber's story doesn't end with her murder, because her suffering continued even after death. During the police search for the missing teenager, 45-year-old Stephen Corrigan stumbled upon her body in the woods. Instead of immediately calling authorities to report the discovery, Corrigan made a choice that defied both human decency and legal obligation. Rather than preserving the crime scene and allowing Amber's family to begin the grieving process, Corrigan chose to sexually violate her remains. He touched her body intimately in multiple areas, including her buttocks, thighs, breasts, and pubic region. He then moved her body and concealed it under bushes and branches, as if trying to hide his own crimes along with Connor's. Forensic analysis later revealed the full extent of Corrigan's violation. His DNA was found in 39 different locations on Amber's naked body, from head to toe, front and back, in quantities that were consistent with extensive physical contact. The areas where his DNA was recovered were places that, if Amber had been alive, would have constituted clear sexual assault. Corrigan's despicable actions didn't just represent a second violation of Amber's dignity, they actively hindered the police investigation and threatened to destroy crucial evidence that could have been used to convict her killer. His decision to conceal her body delayed the discovery of her remains and complicated the forensic analysis that would ultimately prove Connor's guilt. After a 13-day trial that captivated Scotland and horrified observers around the world, justice was finally delivered at the High Court in Livingston. On September 4, 2023, Lord Mulholland sentenced Connor Gibson to life imprisonment for the sexual assault and murder of his sister Amber Gibson. The court set a minimum custodial term of 22 years, reflecting not just the severity of the crimes but the complete breach of trust that made them possible. This sentence means that Connor must serve at least 22 years before he can even be considered for parole, and only then if he's deemed no longer a threat to society. Given the calculated nature of his crimes and his ability to deceive everyone around him for days after the murder, many observers believe he may never be released. Stephen Corrigan was also held accountable for his appalling actions, receiving a 9-year prison sentence for sexual assault and attempting to defeat the ends of justice. His conviction ensured that both men who had violated Amber Gibson, one who killed her and one who desecrated her remains, would face consequences for their crimes. During Connor's trial, even more disturbing details emerged about Amber's tragically short life. Prosecutors revealed that just 5 months before her murder, she had been the victim of another horrific assault. Jamie Stars, a 20-year-old man, had sexually assaulted and raped Amber while she was asleep or unconscious at a property in Bothwell. Stars was convicted in July 2023 and sentenced to 10.5 years in prison, but his crimes served as a grim reminder of the multiple dangers Amber faced throughout her brief life. It seemed that everywhere she turned, predators saw vulnerability instead of a human being deserving of protection and respect. The case of Amber Gibson exposes critical failures in our care systems and raises uncomfortable questions about how we protect society's most vulnerable members. Despite being in residential care, despite social workers being aware of the toxic dynamic between the siblings, despite warning signs that had been accumulating for years, Amber was still able to walk into a situation that staff knew was dangerous. But beyond the systemic failures and the horrific crimes, Amber Gibson was a real person with dreams, talents, and an unbreakable spirit that inspired everyone who knew her. Despite enduring trauma that would crush most adults, she remained creative, loving, and hopeful. She found joy in art and music, pursued her passions with dedication, and cared deeply for the people around her. Those who knew Amber speak not just of a victim, but of a survivor who radiated warmth and possibility despite the darkness that surrounded her. Her foster parents, the Nans, remember a little girl who brought light into their home. Her care workers recall a teenager who never lost her ability to dream, even when those dreams seemed impossible to achieve. Amber Gibson's life was stolen at just 16 years old, but her memory demands more than our sorrow, it demands action. Her story illuminates the shadows where predators hide and reminds us that evil often wears the most familiar faces. It challenges us to look beyond surface appearances and trust our instincts when something feels wrong, even when that something involves people we love. As we remember Amber Gibson, we carry with us the image of a girl who deserved so much better than the hand life dealt her. A girl whose light, though extinguished far too soon, continues to shine in our collective memory and our commitment to protecting others who find themselves in similar danger. Justice has been served, but Amber's absence leaves a void that can never be filled. In remembering her, we honor not just her life, but our obligation to ensure that no other child suffers a similar fate. Her story must serve as a warning, a wake-up call, and a testament to the urgent need for better protection of those who cannot protect themselves. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and never stop asking the hard questions, because sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one who shares your blood.